Welcome back to another Deadman Armageddon video, and today we're going to talk about some of the best day one moneymakers. All of these methods are not created equal. Some take longer to access, other ones require GP to be effective. We'll go over some pros and cons with each method, but nonetheless all of them are able to be accomplished on day one quite easily. But without further ado, to kick things off, let's go ahead and jump into the first one, and we have zombie pirates. Now this method has a really important preface on it because it has been dramatically nerfed since their initial release. The account you are watching in the background does have the Wildy medium diary completed, therefore it is getting pre-nerf loot. Zombie pirates are nowhere near the initial 3 mil GP an hour method they were when they released. Even with that said, considering the rates in Deadman and just the difficulty of getting GP out of the gate, at such a low combat level and with very little requirements, you can still easily make well over 100k in an hour off just pure alkables. And then the last thing I do want to mention with this method is do not forget the two major factors. It is in multi and you do get teleblocked. Unlike the main game, if you do happen to start running away and get gap, you cannot just insta-log out in Deadman. The next method on the list is killing revenants. This can easily be done at a ton of different combat levels. Honestly, I've seen plenty of accounts in here at level 10 just using the starter staff, killing the imps. Realistically, if you want to have the best chance of actually getting some consistent, decent money, you will want to do this at a higher combat level. The higher end of either of the first couple brackets will be plenty, depending on what monsters in the cave you do want to take on. But overall, the two biggest cons when it comes to revs is one, getting the 100k cash you need in order to access the cave. And then two, it does tend to be a pretty heavy PK hotspot. If you get here quickly, you can definitely take advantage of the caves prior to any of the PKers getting the 100k they need to get in. But the last thing I do want to mention, if you are not experienced with the rev caves, if you do die inside, you will have to pay the 100k cash again in order to get back in. As for the next method, this one kind of tends to slip through the cracks when it comes to thinking of potential moneymakers and Deadman, and that is killing green dragons. Protection prayers are one of probably the most important things to get done on day one. So much so a lot of people dedicate their entire immunity time trying to get it done. But those who take different paths with their immunity or just are having a difficult time actually getting their own bones because of PKers, dragon bones easily sell anywhere between like 2 to 3k. Not to mention the fact that dragons in Deadman mode will also drop 2 pairs of bones with every kill. Obviously, you want to be careful taking massive trips and filling up your entire looting bag like you would in the main game, but overall, dragon bones are a very high demand item, making this a potential very good method if you are able to avoid PKers on the first day. And for our next method, we have the agility pyramid. There is a 100% chance there will be PKers at the agility pyramid. But prior to going, if you take some time to get your protection prayers done along with some defense and maybe even some ranging levels, it does only require 35 agility to access, but always the recommendation is somewhere around 50 to make it a much more higher success rate. And just like with Dragon Bones, there is a Deadman specific mechanic with the agility pyramid. Each of the tops is worth 30k GP rather than 10. Making this, in terms of just pure GP without having to sell or alk or do anything else, probably the best method on this entire list. Like I said earlier, there will 100% be PKers here, but if you do have a ton of food and some decent gear and levels, by just continuing to go around the pyramid, hoping either yourself or the person attacking you falls off, it tends to be a pretty difficult place to kill people if you do know what you're doing. And while continuing on the path of training agility, let's talk about our next method, and that is going to be the Wilderness Agility Course. Now this one's a little tricky because overall it is probably without a doubt the best moneymaker possible on day one. Well, that might be a little stretch saying that, but it's definitely one of the more consistent, better ones, we'll put it that way. With that said though, this method is very high risk, high reward. Not only are you going to be all the way upwards in like the level 50 wilderness, you will need 52 agility and you also have to pay 150k GP in order to access the looting mechanic of the arena. Then on top of all of that, the Wilderness Agility Course's loot system is based on a number of laps, meaning the longer you're there, the better your loot gets. And in Deadman, this creates a very difficult problem. But I think in order to even have a chance to profit off doing the Wilderness Agility course without just using your immunity, you will most likely have to fight back and be able to PK yourself to have any chance of being here on a longer term basis. Unlike Revenants, where if you don't die and you just leave the cave and bank, you can easily go right back in. Every single time you leave the Wildy Agility Arena, you have to repay the 150k when you come back in order to start gaining loot again. As you can tell from this clip, I am not getting any of the loot when I tag the pillar because I didn't pay the GP when I got in. Overall, I think a very difficult method to be highly effective, but also way too good of a moneymaker not to at least include in the list. And for the last method we're going to include in this video, feel free to comment any other methods down in the comments below you think should have made this list or are also very good alternatives. But the last one on this list I'm going to mention is just taking advantage of sigils. And you can take that a lot of different ways. One, it can just be AFK killing things on different parts of the map and just hoping to get them as drops. This becomes a much better moneymaker in the higher level brackets when you can get higher tier sigils. But more specifically, I'm talking about things like the Sigil of Agile Fortune, which will give you 10k GP with every Mark of Grace when you're running rooftop agility courses. Probably a slightly worse GP in our method when it comes to agility in comparison to the agility pyramid, but most likely with a ton less risk. Then there's other sigils like the Hunter Sigil and the Sigil of the Abyss. Obviously this time around the Sigil of Abyss has been nerfed from 10x to 5x runes, but even with that there is a ton of possibility to still make good money crafting some specific types of runes. And then the Hunter Sigil, which gives you 3 chins per catch. This one's a little more difficult because this will be a pricey sigil for sure, and chins are a very heavily PK'd hotspot. Even with that said though, chins are such a high demand item and are very expensive on day one. Even just camping here for 10 to 15 minutes with this sigil can net you a ton of profit. And then lastly on the list we have all of the sigils for things like mining, woodcutting, fishing and cooking, and then fletching. The Infernal Smith and Chef have seen big nasty nerfs this season, going from a 100% chance of successfully smelting or cooking down to a 20% chance. Even with those nerfs, combining these with sigils like the double resources and the 90% banking, these can be very good AFK moneymakers to possibly even do on an alt account. And it goes without saying, there are a ton of other sigils that have a money-making capability, things like the Sigil of the Bloodhound and just doing one-step clue scrolls, or buying the Alk Sigil and just alking items off the Grand Exchange. There are plenty of different ways to make money, but overall, these are some of the better sigils and best methods you could potentially take advantage of on day one of Deadman Armageddon and make absolute bank if you did want to swap GP over, or if you just wanted to make money on an alt account to feed your main in progress. Let me know down in the comments below if there were any methods you guys think should have been included. If you guys did enjoy or found the video helpful, consider dropping a like. Otherwise, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We definitely have a few more Deadman videos coming before the kickoff of Armageddon, and I will catch you guys in the next one.